Hi everybody. So nobody's here yet, and that's totally fine. I am really excited to be able to teach all of this and to be able to get it ready for you guys today. It's going to be super awesome. So I'm just gonna kind of hang out here while we wait for everybody else to come. And see, we've got our first person coming in. Awesome. Hi, Kelsey. Okay. And I'm gonna let go in. Okay, looks like we're getting connected to audio. Awesome. It looks like you guys are both muted. Hey, how's it going? Hi. Okay, we are almost ready to start. Okay, awesome. Just gonna wiggle us over here. I keep trying to adjust the view, make sure you got everything that you need to see. Okay, now if we come up here. Okay, awesome. Now I can see everybody. Okay, so I think we've got two other people that are going to be joining us today. But that doesn't mean that we can't start without them. Anyway, we'll give them another minute. But okay, so Charcoal, how do you say your first name?
Carolyn.
Oh, Carolyn. Oh, okay. It only like half of it's showing up on my screen. Awesome. Carolyn, hi, it's nice to meet you. For real.
You too, Laura.
Awesome. Okay, and where are you at in the world?
In San Antonio, Texas right now.
Oh, very nice. Okay, awesome. Okay, so this is Jane down at the bottom that's coming in, and then we've got Kelsey there as well. So we've got one more person that may or may not make it, but I think we've got nice enough of us. Awesome. So, oh my gosh, I've been complaining about how hot it is here in Kansas. I probably should keep that to myself. Are you guys just sweltering in Texas?
It's hot in here too. Yes.
Oh, that's awful. Okay. All right. So let's go here. Okay. Oh, look, we've got one painted already. Hi, little friend.
She painted herself.
Oh, she did. You look fantastic. I love it. That's awesome. Okay. Awesome. Okay. Well, so let me just kind of give you the idea of how this is going to go. We've got the next 2 hours together, which is awesome. And I have some amazing flower stuff we're going to go through. You are more than welcome to ask questions if you have them. You're also welcome to type whatever you want in the comments. I don't read the comments during the video, but I do go back through and I read them after. So if there's anything that you want me to follow up with or that you have questions about, but you don't want to interrupt to do it, we can totally do it that way too. Anyway, but does anybody have any questions before we get going? We're good? Okay, awesome. Okay, so here we go. Great. Okay. So we are doing flower power for our class tonight. And the reason that flowers are so powerful is because they work in a lot of different ways. Some designs are really kind of stuck in how we can use them, what they're good for, but flowers, you see them, they make awesome tattoo looking designs and they make perfect little hair, accessories for a little illustration design we're using. And so they're super powerful as either the main character of a design or just supporting cast. While we go through this, we are going to take a look at 3 different techniques that we can use to build our flowers and to be able to make them really powerful. And so I can't wait. The first thing that I wanted to show you, and I gotta grab couple of markers here to do it, is I want to go over just really briefly the anatomy of a flower. So if you look at a flower, usually when we draw a flower, if we're just kind of doodling, it looks something kind of like this, right? We've got the center of the flower and then we've got the petals around. And that looks really nice. I mean, it's cute. We might come in here and we might add some leaves. And while that can be great, what we're missing is we're missing the chance to really understand the flower and what it is we're trying to capture. So anytime we're painting a flower, we want to be able to capture the dimension of the flower, we want to capture the texture, and we want to capture the symmetry. So on this flower, you can see we have what's called radial symmetry, where we have this piece. Oh, I should change the color so that makes more sense. Okay, we have this piece right here, and then it repeats all the way around the circle. And understanding that symmetry is going to be really important later on. But I like real flowers better than fake ones. So I have some real ones here that I can show you the anatomy better on. And they're going to fall apart because I'm going to pull them apart. Okay. So here's our first flower. And so this is the way we usually draw it. And we see the top and we see the center. But if we look, almost every flower is going to have the same parts. So we have the stem of the flower, we have this little like proto leaf, and we can have bigger leaves. And then the back of the flower, we're going to have this base of the bud right here. And then we also have these little green things that like they're tiny on this one, but they're called sepals. So it's like the beginning of a petal.
Oh,
and then we have the actual petals. And you can see that even on this daisy, we have a pink color and then it goes white around the inside. And so you can see we've got all of this cool texture, and we don't have to just draw it this way. We could draw it this way or this way or this way or this way. And it's really awesome to be able to understand the way that the anatomy works. But not all flowers have that same setup. So if we look at a rose has this really awesome tight spiral, and it just goes out bigger and bigger and bigger. And when it comes to a point, when it comes to a point up at the top, a rosebud is going to be a pointed bud, where if we're looking at a peony, it's going to be more of a ball. And so being able to spend just a little bit of time with the real flowers really gives us a feeling for what it is we're trying to do. And while we paint some roses later in the class, you can see that because the light can't get inside of the petal, like if we pull one of these petals off here, it makes me feel sad, but we did it. It's all the same color. There's really no difference in color. It might even be a little lighter right here at the bottom. There's like a little white spot. But when we look at it here, we can see it's actually quite a bit darker inside. And that is because of the light. The light can't get in there, and so that light pink shade turns a lot darker pink. But here on the back, we can see we've got those same sepals, and we've got that stem, and this stem is pretty short. But if we look at a bigger stem, you'll see, hold on, let me get us a bigger stem here. Okay. So this stem here, you can see it has a little bump on it where this one comes out, and it has a little bump on it where this one comes out. So our stems even aren't perfectly straight. And while we capture these little nuances and details in our painting, it's going to make it look more natural. It's going to make it look more realistic, and it's going to be funner for us to know, hey, I know what I'm doing. Instead of like, I'm trying to do this petal, I'm trying to do this flower. It's like, no, I've got this. I know what's going on. Now, every flower we paint is going to have that bud and that blossom, and that's awesome. But flowers like to have friends. Very few flowers hang out all by themselves. If you look in a flower garden, there are lots of flowers. If you look at a flower shop, there are lots of flowers. They are even on the same bush, there are lots of flowers on the same bush or on the same plant. Flowers like friends, and they like families. And so the way to tell who is a family in flowers is it's going to be exactly the same flower, but at different life stages. And so a flower bud is like this cute little baby flower. And then one that's kind of open is a little kid flower, and one that is bright open is an adult flower. And let me show you what that looks like. So over here on this one, This flower is totally open, and we've got some petals that are about to fall off, and it's just like, this is a beautiful adult flower. But if we come over here, we'll grab this one. This is a cute little baby flower bud, and it's taking a nap, and all we see is green. If we were closer, you could see there's like a bulgy green right here, and then the little sepals are like the blanket around. But if I'm sneaky and I'm just pinching it open, you can see that inside we've got this cute little baby flower that's just waiting to wake up and say hello and be done with nap time. And so when we put flowers into our designs, if we put mommy flower, little sister flower, and little baby flower, it will look natural and it will look real, because that is the way flowers are when they're natural and real. Then flower friends, the way that we can tell who is friends with flowers, flowers grow together at different times of the year. So you can tell by your color choice and by your variety choice. I'm trying to think, like plant actual choice, which flowers are going to grow at the same time of year. So if we get this beautiful sunflower, which we've got one actually somewhere here. Okay, so here we have this beautiful sunflower, and this is a little kid sunflower. It's not very big and it's not very open. But we know that we would not paint this sunflower in the same painting as a chrysanthemum, because chrysanthemums or poinsettias are often, okay, so I'm talking about a poinsettia. I told you the wrong word. But anyway, so a poinsettia we usually draw at Christmas, because that is when that flower is beautiful. And if we put a poinsettia with a sunflower, there's going to be this like awkwardness, because it's like those don't go together, even though the shape is similar a little bit. But so we know if we're doing spring flowers, we're going to be using really soft colors. Cherry blossoms and apple blossoms, they're very white. The earliest flowers that come up are the crocuses and the tulips, which can be any color you want, and the daffodils. Those flowers are friends. But then if we go into the summer flowers, that's where the sunflower is going to be blooming, the roses are blooming, and so we can paint those ones together. And that just kind of makes it feel good, and it makes it jive. So as we look at what we want in our designs, we want to have a main focal point. And that is going to be the story that we're telling. We are telling the story of that flower. And then we want to add in those little friends, so no flower gets lonely. The only lonely flower that I like is the Beauty and the Beast flower, because, you know, of course, it's the lone rose. So we can do lone roses, but flowers love to have friends. And then we want the greenery. And often we get stuck drawing the same shape over and over. This is a very good shape for a leaf. We've just got this really pretty leaf. But if we look at a bouquet, hold on, and we're getting a few different leaves here. Okay, you can see we've got these awesome little tiny green things that are kind of pokey, but not too bad. And then we've got this leaf that's even a little damaged, and there's a little bit of brown on it, and that's a beautiful shape. And you can see that this has like serrated edges where this one is smooth. But when you put these together and they bring these different colors of green, and then of course you have your flower, all of a sudden we're starting to make a flower arrangement. And that is exactly what we get to do when we're painting our faces, is we're turning them into a flower arrangement. Now, anytime you go and you buy an arrangement, the first thing that they ask, and we're gonna see if a high density, no, that's not gonna work. Okay, hold on. I'm gonna grab us, there we go. Okay. So when we look at a flower arrangement, we are going for the shape. And so the same thing is true when we're going to paint a face. I'm just trying to get us, yeah, here she is. Okay, so here we have this head-on face. And we can go through and we can have a design that's right here, and that's going to be a really small little flower arrangement. Or we can have a crown design, and that's going to give us a different shape that we are looking to fill. And so as we go through, I'll kind of show you how, okay, we put our first flower in, and then we put some supporting flowers, and then we add some green, and we're really fleshing out from top to bottom these arrangements, and they will fit and flow wherever we put them. So let's go ahead and put her up there. Okay, awesome. So what I want to show you now is that we want to do our first technique, which is super awesome. And this is where we're going to be doing some double loading. If you guys are painting along, I'm happy to slow down if you guys have questions, but I'm also happy to just keep going. And part of taking the class is you will get a link to the recording if you would like, so that you can go back and watch it later if you just want to watch this first time. Okay, we got a thumbs up. That's awesome. Okay, so the first thing that I want to show you guys here is I want to show you the difference between a round brush and a petal brush. So I'm going to bring it up close so that you can see. All right. Here is one of the most important keys of face painting that nobody talks about. A bristle is the conduit of water. So water and paint mixed together is what we're looking for. The more water we have, the more paint we're able to get. And that is what the bristles are for. So if we look at a round brush, which is the blue handled one, the bristles are all very long and they are consistent. And so they are going to carry more water. The petal brush is really thick down at the bottom, and then it's very thin up at the top. And what that's going to allow us to do is in one dab is to paint the shape of a petal. Where with the round brush, if we do one dab with that, we're going to be painting a long, like ovally shape. And so a round brush, when just laid down, gives you this shape, and a petal brush is going to give you the shape of a petal. And so what we're going to do is we are going to learn a couple of tricks when we're loading our petal brushes. So the first thing is you always want to make sure you have a nice wet brush. So we have this brush, and you can see that I made my white a mess earlier today, and we are going to just load it, okay? Now, that was like 3-second load, okay? And now what's going to happen is I've got some paint on the brush and I've got a bunch of water on the brush. And if I start painting petals right now, they're going to be wet. They're going to be too wet, and it's going to like drip and run down the kid's face, which the kid is going to hate and we're going to hate, and it's all going to be awful. Lots of hating. So what we want to do when we're loading for a petal is we want to go back and forth and spin and keep going around. And this is the muddiest paint you ever want. So your paint is on top of your cake and the brush is coming to get some of it. And sometimes we want that paint to be almost like water. And sometimes we want that paint to be more like chocolate milk. This paint for a petal brush, we want almost yogurt. Like we really want it to be creamy. And if you're painting for a long, busy day, it can be kind of hard to have creamy paint in your pot at the same time as liquid paint, because you're going to add so much water that you're going to hate the paint. The paint's gonna like goop up and be like, I'm done. I'm not working for you anymore. So it can be really nice to keep one side of your cake for petals and one side of your cake for line work, or even to have two separate cakes so that you know this is where I'm getting goopy and this is where I'm not. So as we go in and we've got this super goop right here, okay, this is going to be wonderful. Now we're all loaded all the way up to the ferrule, which is the metal part of the paintbrush. And then what we have is we have this awesome thick part of the bristles that are white, and then we have our tip. But when we're petal painting, we don't want that tip to be white. We want it to be a different color. And so the darker color you use, you're going to be able to get a more contrast in your petal, and it's gonna look awesome. And you can do a double load or you can do a triple load. But if you look at this paint, so this is just really dark paint that I use when I'm doing my petals. And if we come in here and we start painting, all of the white paint on the tip of our paintbrush is going to turn it into pastel. And it's pretty, but it's not as bold and as vibrant. And so what you'll do is you just take your brush and you just paint with the little tippy toe of your brush and get all that paint off. Look how much white is on the tip of this petal brush. I'm just going and going and going and going. Okay, now it's getting thinner. So now I've got lots of paint loaded, except for my tip is almost completely clean. And so what I want to do next is I take the back of my petal brush and I dip it in the water. So I've got one little bead of water. And I'm going to take that bead of water and I'm going to take it over here, and let's pick this pretty blue color, and I'm going to streak it across the blue. And what that does is if we just drop it, then if I come in here with my petal the brush is going to soak up all the water because that's what bristles do. But if we streak it, it gives us just this line of paint that has now been activated. So you'll feel like you're in elementary school again and you're doing watercolor. Now we take the tip of our brush and we come in here to that streak and we just grab, and look, you can barely even see white on this cake because it is just picking up that really dark blue tip. Sorry, I'm loading so I can see instead of you, but okay, so here we go. So we're loading that up. Now we've got this awesome brush that is just ready to paint petals for us. Now the biggest difference it's gonna make is how hard we push is going to change the shape of this petal. So if we push really lightly and the angle that we do it at, so here I am, here, I'm gonna kind of show you this way. If we do a really 90-degree angle, and we're gonna have to tilt a little bit, so like 85-degree angle, and we push, we're only getting the very top of the brush and then a little bit of white, and it's gonna paint this cute little petal. Then if we push and we lay down just a little bit more, it will give us a longer petal. And then if we push and we lay down all the way to the ferrule, it gives us an even longer petal. And that can be really awesome to be able to choose the size of our flower. If we want a little tiny flower, we know just keep our brush up and down. If we want a really big one, lay it down. Now another thing that we can do is when we lay it down, if we lay it down and then we wiggle back and forth and we pull it back up, now we've got almost a squared off petal, a nice big fat petal. And we can do, if we look at how many petals fit around a circle, if we do really thin petals, we might get 6 or 7. If we do really fat petals, we can do 3 or 4, and the blossom looks completely different, even with the same brush and the same paint. Now what we want to be able to do is I want to show you one more cool thing that these can do. If we pull the dark inside, just like we would a teardrop, and we bring it and we lay it down, then we can do this really fun looking line that can create these awesome flowers that are almost like shooting star kind of flowers. And it just gives us this really new way to use that petal brush to create something that's almost, anyway, I'll show you later where we can use that. I just wanted to show you while we had that set up. I'm gonna grab a wet wipe real quick. Okay. So as we're using this petal brush, what we want to do, and I'm going to see how close to her we can get so that you can see really good, but I'm going to get super huge here while we get closer to her. So I'm going to ditch that. Okay. Sorry. Okay. So as we look at her and where we want to be able to paint her face, okay, there we go. All right, so we're gonna paint right around her face right here with those petals. And I'm gonna show you 2 different ways that we can do it that is gonna look absolutely awesome. So we're gonna just grab our white and we're gonna load that up really great. Get it nice and goopy, which once you've loaded, the load will love you and it will just, that paint will stay super goopy for you as long as you need it to. And actually, I am going to change so that we have higher contrast there. So we've got a little bit higher. Okay, so then we want to make sure that we're wiping off the tip of our brush. Let's get that white off so that we can load up that darker color. And we want to streak our paint. Okay, so these are gonna look like cherry blossoms. And we wanna remember that flowers love friends. And so we're not gonna paint just one, we're gonna paint a couple. And so here what we're gonna do is we're gonna just come and we're gonna just press and release, and we're just going around in this nice shape, leaving a little bit of space in between. And then we'll come up here and we'll do one more. And we can, you know, wiggle them out a little bit if we want them to look like they've got this cute little heart shape. Okay, and then the bridge of the, not the bridge, but the cheekbone right here, we want to go ahead and follow that. So we're going to just bring a couple petals there, one more, couple petals here. Okay, so we've got this awesome start to a design right there. And I'm going to show you one other way that we can change that. So we're going to take her and we're going to pretend like these two are friends and they're out having fun and they came to get their face painted. Back when we used to do stuff like that, right? Okay, so this time I'm going to load up just some light blue. So instead of having white be the base of the color, the base of the petal, I'm just going to use this fun light blue color, and then I'll come over and I'll grab some dark pink as the center, which will turn more into like a purpley color. Okay, so we're going to do a very similar thing that we did over here, only we want to bring it all in tighter. And so we're going to just go ahead and do 5 petals here. Five petals here. And then add in those extra petals. And how we know where to put those little extra petals is any place you see a V is an opening where petals could go. And then we want to decide where to put them based on how to keep our shape the way we want it to be. So I'm imagining a circle right around her eye, and I'm trying to keep everything nice and tight right inside that circle. Okay. Awesome. All right, so now we're gonna finish each of these a little bit differently. So this first one, or the second one over here, I'm gonna just get this little tiny filbert. It's a number 8, and so it has this nice thin little tip at the top, and we're gonna just load that up with a couple of greens. And so I'm gonna get a light green and a dark green, and we're gonna just load that up. And then we'll come over here, and just like we looked for these for the petals, we're gonna look for these for the leaves. And this shape, all it is that we're trying to do is we're gonna just lay down that filbert, and then we're gonna just roll and pick it up. And so it's like the smallest little teardrop shape that we wanna go ahead and we wanna add that in here. So we're gonna come here, and we're gonna add one right here because there's a V, and then there's a nice V here, so we're gonna go ahead and add 2. And we're gonna add 2 right here. We're gonna add 1 down here. Then we'll add 2 right here. 1 into the corner of the eye, 2 right there. So we wanna add them anywhere that a petal is touching in between 2 different flowers. And then we can also put them in here. Okay, awesome. So now you can see we have flowers, those flowers have friends, and there's greenery because they don't like to be lonely. Now what we want to do is we want to go ahead and we want to add a little bit more to this one. So this one, instead of adding leaves, cherry blossoms actually blossom before the leaves are on the tree. And so I'm just taking a really small brush here and I'm just loading up some black. I'm gonna just do one thing real quick here. Okay, we're doing great. All right. Okay, so what we want to do here, awesome. Okay, is we want to go through and we want to add these little leaves or these little branches. Now, anytime we paint branches, which are another thing that flowers love, is we want to remember that we're going from branch to stick to twig. And so from right here, we're going to bring a branch from the hair to come in. And it's a lot like playing dot to dot. We're just going to connect all of our little pieces. So there's our branch. It turns into a stick and it goes out to a little twig. So then here we go stick to twig, stick to twig. Here we come out, stick to twig, stick to twig. And then up here, we want to come over and add those little extra pieces. Stick, we're down on the twig.
Hey, Laura, can you scoot it over to, like, over a little bit? Yeah, because your head's kind of blocking the branches.
Thank you. Perfect. Okay, awesome. So we want to make sure that we're not going in like a firework. This isn't like a flower in the middle and then branches coming out everywhere. We are focusing on, here's where the tree is, off in her hair, and we are coming down, and that is the direction, the overall direction that we're going is from this way to that way. So a little twig can go up and a little twig can come down, but we want to maintain that overall flow. And that's what's going to keep it looking really beautiful. So then from here, what we want to do is we're going to just load up a little white one, and we're going to finish off each of these designs. Thank you. That was very useful. So here we have the big flowers, but we don't have any centers for them. So we're going to come in and we're going to add just 3 little dots, 2 that are about the same size and 1 that's a little smaller. And then we add another little dot at the center of any of those petals. Just like that. And then we're going to come up here and we're going to add 3 dots and then a couple little ones and just like that. Now our flowers are done, but the overall design is still missing a little something. And of course we can always glitter it because we glitter everything, right? But what we can do is we can add these extra little dots that will become the baby flowers, the little filler flowers. And so we can add this baby's breath by just adding more white dots into any of those empty spaces. And we just want to vary their size a little bit. We want to have a little trail of them up at the top and down at the bottom. And it just fills in that circle shape that we were creating. And now you can see that we have a really nice little cluster of flowers right around the eye, and it's ready to go. And we want to do the same thing over by the branches, except we don't really want to have the branches be quite as covered, because in this little bouquet, there's a lot going on. But over here, we want that space, we want that simplicity. And so we want to add the center of our flowers. So anywhere we have a petal, we add a little dot, and when we have a whole flower, we add 3. But then we want to keep this direction. And so here at the end, we can add a couple extra little dots. By the corner of the eye, we add a couple dots. Maybe here we add a couple, and then maybe here we add just a few trailing right there. But you can see that here we're trying to create something that's a little busy, and here we're trying to create something that is really nice and subtle. And so that is giving us that shape. And then the most important, not the most important, but an important thing is at this point in any design to take a second and to take a step back and to look at it and to say, okay, what is missing or am I done? If we try and make that decision while we're right up close to it, it's really hard and we'll keep adding and adding and adding until we are bored or until we over add. And then it's like, oh, dang it, I messed it up. I hate when I mess up designs because I don't stop early enough. But when we take a step back and we say, okay, does that look right? Does that look balanced? I feel like this one, absolutely, it looks great. But I feel like this one, we're just missing a little tiny stick. We need one little stick to come out here that has no flowers on it for me to just feel like That's balanced. And now I'm happy. So even the smallest thing, when you get to the point where you're happy with a painting, then the kid is going to be happy, because that emotion, it emanates. When we're all excited, then they're all excited and everybody's great. That's awesome. So I just want to show you real quick how this one turned out close. So here she is, and she's just all excited. Look at the expression on her face. She's so happy. Okay, so there we have her. And then I want to show you the difference by just keeping that simple, how it's just a different feeling, and it's the exact same flowers. It's even the same placement, but just swapping out the green for the black and branches for leaves, we have a completely different design. And it's always hard for me to pick which one I want to do because I love both of them so much. So, okay, we might have them help us a little bit later. Okay, so one last thing I wanted to show you guys before we move on from this technique of double dipping petals is I want to show you what that can look like with one more flower. So we're gonna grab her again. And this is where we're not trying to capture, we'll put a little bit there, a flower super well, but we want to do just a little bit. So a lot of times women, when they come in, they just want a little something, and they've already got their makeup done and it looks fantastic. And so okay, so I'm gonna put, this is just a powder paint that I'm gonna put on, and this can be really fun to add to accentuate somebody's makeup that they're already wearing. But I'm gonna just see if my paper will take a little bit of this. So she comes in, oh yeah, look how awesome she looks. And she's got this awesome makeup, and she doesn't want you to mess it up, or actually more often, they're like, oh yeah, I don't care at all. And I'm like, inside of me, I'm like, no, it looks amazing. I don't want to mess that up. And so I'm trying to find a way to make this awesome, but without totally sabotaging what she already has there. And so just using those same petal techniques, we can add something super beautiful and simple that's going to make this really pop. And so let me show you that before we move on. So we just get that same petal brush and go back to our nice and goopy paint, load it up, makes us happy. Okay, now anytime we have a shape on the face, it's going to be beautiful because we see them all the time, and anything we see a lot, we grow attached to. So even like weird weeds or like ugly clunker cars, it's like, oh, I love that car, you know, and like somebody else is like, oh, get rid of it. And you're like, no, it's been rusting at the side of the yard forever. I couldn't live without that car. And that's kind of the way that it can be with shapes on the face. And I'm not saying that they're ugly and we just like them, but we actually really do. We are attracted to them. And so here we have the shape of the eye. And if we can stay true to that shape and just accentuate it, it's going to be really pleasing. Even if we took that same shape and we drew it on paper, it might not be as awesome. So we're just grabbing a little bit of pink on the tip of our brush, and I forgot to wipe the white off, and so it's going to be a light pink, but that's okay. It'll work. We love it. And we're gonna come just right along underneath her eye. And we're going to put in just some petals. And so this is almost like her eye is the flower, and we are giving these petals right underneath her eye, and we're just doing a nice little trail of them, and they're getting smaller as they get over to the corner. So I don't want to go all the way under her eye, or it's going to look a little bit like clown makeup. I just want to do the outer like half. There we go, or 2/3. And then we're going to take a small round brush, and we're going to just load it with some green. And we're going to come in here, and in the same way that we would do cat eye eyeliner, if we were to draw the line from her eye and then do the eyeliner, it would come out in between those two top petals. If we try and follow right across that top petal, it's going to look a little too harsh. And so we can line the eye, but usually they'll already have eyeliner on. So we're gonna just come right here and we're just gonna bring this thin little green line up. Am I blocking? Yes, I am. Okay. I'm gonna have her go back a little farther, so okay. So we're gonna just bring this thin line up there. And then we're gonna bring a little leaf here. And we're gonna bring a leaf here. And then we can bring a couple little green leaves here and here, maybe one here, and then one more right there. And then we can just bring another leaf right here on the outside, and then another little wisp of a leaf, and maybe one more thin little wisp. We can even curl it up here if we want to. But you can see we're just looking to add this little whoosh of color with those petals. And so we can use petals without even having a full flower. And then with the white dots, we go in and that's where we add the focal point and the drama to this little tiny flower arrangement. So we're gonna come here and we're gonna do a dot here, and then we're gonna trail little dots up. And then we can add a few in the corner if we want, but we're gonna just come back and we're gonna just add those little white dots all the way under the eye. And then we can add some sparkles and stars, but again, we're trying to keep this subtle. So instead, I'm gonna just bring a couple teardrops. And we're gonna just bend them and pull them in right there. Maybe add one more little dot, maybe 3 little clustery dots right up there at the top. Okay, and then of course we can sparkle it and it will be awesome and beautiful. Okay, so here, let me show you, look how fun and just what a pop that is with the exact same brushes, the same colors, the same technique, but we've taken, oh, you have flowers on your face too. I'm kind of hinting at you that I like flowers. I'm kind of sharing that this is something I'm interested in, but we've played with her makeup and it's awesome. Okay, so that is our first technique. We want to be able to take those double loaded petals and just really make them sing. All right, so next what we want to do, our technique number 2 is going to be our one stroking. And one stroking is something that it allows us to capture the drama and the diversity of flowers, but without having to work quite as hard on coloring it in. So if you've ever drawn a flower with like a pencil, there's so much shading. And on the job, we don't have time for that. We need to be able to go in there and go boom, 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 and there's the flower, and it's so awesome. And so one stroking really lets us do that. And we're gonna go through 3 different one-stroked flowers that are really awesome. So let's get started. We're gonna get another little friend to help us out here. Now, it's Carolina, right? Okay, have you had very much experience with one stroking yet? I know you said that you're, okay, do you have any one stroke paint? Oh, okay, awesome. So you're totally on board. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we weren't gonna like go into this lofty thing and you're like, I have no idea what she's talking about. Okay, great, let's do this, it's awesome. There are 3 shapes that we need to start with when we're one stroking, and there are 3 different brushes that we can use to one stroke. Okay, so I'm gonna show you the brushes first because we always have to start with a brush. That's what I love. Okay. Okay, so here we have this awesome filbert, and it lets us just go nice and round, and it will make okay, so the reason there are 3 different brushes is because they all play a different role. They will all make different marks, and as we're one stroking, each of those different brushes, those different marks, can play a different role in our painting. And so we will use all 3 of these as we go through these one stroked flowers. And we're gonna start here with this one. This is a 3/4 inch flat brush, and it is my favorite flat brush to use while one stroking. And this one here, it's the same brush, only the bristles are longer. And remember from the beginning, bristles bring water and they carry the paint away. And so the longer the bristles, the more paint we can carry and the more water we can carry. And in one stroking, sometimes that's a really good thing and sometimes it's a really bad thing. So if you want to be able to go in and immediately start adding some line work, you don't want to use a longer bristled brush. But if instead you want to paint this gorgeous rainbow and you want there to be bold colors in every single line, then the longer bristles will really help you carry and make that sing. So in the design that we'll do for this section, we'll actually use both of these brushes. But for right now, I'm going to start with this one. So to load a one stroke, it's actually a two-part load. So I'm just getting my brush wet, and it's not quite drippy wet, but there's a lot of water in the bristles. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take and we're going to choose what one we want to load. I'm going to try and pick one that will show up really well. We'll use some peacock colors. That'll be great. Okay, so we go and we just load up and down and up and down and up and down a few times. And if you look at the brush now with this load, it is half loaded. We've got half, and I'm just painting on myself. That's awesome. Okay, we've got the paint that goes up through half of the bristles, and then we have this empty space where there's nothing, except that's not true. It's loaded with water. And so in order to get more paint onto this brush, we need to get rid of that water. And I'll show you how that works. It's really pretty cool. What you do is you take your paper towel, and I do this laying flat. I wouldn't do it in the air, but I'm gonna try and show it to you. And we are going to put pressure on the ferrule, with the ferrule of the brush, onto this brush. And so we bring it over, and it's just laying flat on the paper towel. And then we are going to press with the ferrule, and it bends the bristles. And when we do that, a little bit of paint comes off, but what happens is that paper towel sucks all of that extra water out. And so now it's empty. And what we can do is we can go back in and we can load back and forth and back and forth. And those empty bristles are now ready to pick up paint. And you can see, instead of the paint being stuck halfway through the brush, it has now filled all of the bristles all the way up to the ferrule. There's a little spot there that doesn't have any, but this brush will now paint a lot longer and give you a much fuller load because it is full of paint. Okay, so when we're one stroking, there are 3 shapes that we need to be able to do, and they are all petals, which is awesome. So the first one is just a round petal. And what we want to do is we want to start when you're doing one stroke. Let me show you this. This is super important. When you're doing one stroke, if we just do a line like this, it's cool. And people will be like, whoa, she just painted with 3 colors in one and it's awesome and whatever. But if we go thin to thick to thin, look how much more drama, and I didn't do it quite right because it's weird to paint for a camera. See, I can't even show you. Look how much more drama and style that stroke has than that one. And so I'll do it up on the board so that you can see a little better overall, but you can't see the color swipe quite as well. Okay, but if we do just our stroke where it's nice and thick, it's like, okay, there it is. But if we come and we go thin to thick to thin, then there's just that drama and that elegance. And that is what one stroking is all about. It's about capturing that movement and that flow. And so as we paint our petals, what we want to do is we want to watch for that same motion and movement, and we want to control it. And the way to control it is we want to keep the inside colors on the inside of a petal and the outside colors on the outside of a petal. And so here we come in and we are going thin to thick to thin. And right here, that is an incredible important part because it's where the pivot is. So I'll show you right here on my hand. So we're coming in, maybe. Okay. We're coming in and we're doing this thin to thick to thin. And as we get to this point, we want to pivot the outer edge of that brush. If we have it stuck to where we're just going up and then back down, what will happen is the inside of the brush will bend, and it will bend in, and you will end up with this inside color on the outside. And when you're first starting with one stroking, that happens fairly often, and it's really annoying because it's like, what happened? Now, is this right and is this wrong? Absolutely not. The goal in art and in painting, face painting, is to be able to draw and paint what you set out to draw and paint. So if you want to make that mark, which I'm going to show you here in a little bit when we want to, then that's perfect. But if that isn't what you were intending and that's what's happening, that's where we need to practice a little bit more. So that's our first petal. It's just up and back. The second one is where we come up to a point and then we do our pivot and then we come back down. And that pivot is the outer edge of the bristles, just adjusting. It's not really moving anywhere. It's just getting ready to come back down. Okay. So we've come up and around, then we've come up and back down. The last one is this first one, except at the top, we have a little party. So we go thin to thick, and then we party, and then we come back thin. And that party gives us this awesome little wiggle. And often we'll end up with this empty space in between. And that can be great to go in with another color and do the same thing, only smaller. So I can show that to you. I'll do it in pink and yellow because who doesn't love pink and yellow? Okay, so we come back in here and we can come up and then wiggle there. And now we've got like a full rainbow. And that can look amazing, especially in like a butterfly wing. Or we can just go in with the side of our brush and color it in. And this is something I do all the time. So we come up and we wiggle and come down, and then we just color in that little edge. And by coloring that in, it gives us a nice look. Okay, so the first flower that we are, or the first design we're going to do is going to use this wiggly petal. And let me show it to you. It is so fun. Now, when we look at the human face and we are like, okay, here we go, we're gonna paint something awesome, it's really hard to stay symmetrical. It's one of the hardest things to learn. And so one of the ways that can help us is if we split the actual human face in half, then we can know this half of the face is going to match that half, but we can do it by itself by just matching it to its own side. So we look for landmarks. We want to see where the eyebrow is. We want to see where the eye is. We want to see where the cheekbone is. And by matching it to those landmarks, it's kind of like setting up a tent. It's like, okay, we put a stake over here and a stake over here, and the tent is going to be balanced. And so let me show you how that helps when we're one stroking. I'm using my longer bristles because I'm going to be laying down this first stroke that's really important. So we're going to come in here and we're going to load up some blue. And this is going to be some water for us. And I'm just doing the nice load. And then you can see I sucked out the water. Now I've loaded again and it's like 3/4 of the way there. So I can load just a little bit longer and activate that paint. And now look how much paint is in that brush. It is like fully loaded and ready to go. So because this first stroke is so important, I want to make sure that it's exactly where I want it to be. So I'm going to start right here in the center of the forehead. And I'm going to just do this little dropped down V. And so it's good. It's a little bit off, but I'm painting kind of over here. So this is gonna work. And then we're gonna add one little loop on this side, and we're gonna add one little loop on this side. Now you can see that we are ready for the big swoosh, which is awesome. And we want it to hit the top of each eyebrow, but we don't wanna just draw a straight line. It'll be a nice sharp V, but we wanna have a little bit more elegance. So we wanna do our thin to thick to thin. So we start right here on the side and we swoop thin to thick to thin. And we come in there and look how much more fun and drama there is in that swoop. And then we can come over here and we can do it the way back out, or we can just do the same way back in. Either way, just whatever is easiest for you. So we're gonna come over here and we're gonna go thin, hit that eyebrow and come in. And you can see we've got this awesome little crown that is just waiting for that centerpiece. And that is where our flower is going to live. Okay, so I've got my brush nice and washed out, and we're going to load up our second color. And I'm just using pink and yellow because it's so beautiful and bright and lovely. Sucking out the water and getting that load again. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to kind of plan out where we're going to put our flower. And obviously on this design, it's really easy. It's going to go right there in the middle. So we're going to come and we're going to just do our thin to thick to thin petal that parties at the top. So we come up, have a little bit of a party, and come down. We're going to do another petal over on this side. We come up, wiggle, and come in. Another one right here. And they don't all have to be exactly the same size. We're just looking for the overall same shape. And then if this was on skin, this would paint over a little bit better, but we could even have left that little blue part out. I just really like it. So we're gonna put one more petal right there and then one more petal right there. And you can see we've got this awesome hibiscus that is just living right there on that little splash, waiting for some green. Now, when we put the leaf in, if we look at a leaf, unless there's a hurricane, find us a good one, Karen. Okay. Okay, so here's our leaf right here. When we look at it, unless there's a hurricane, it doesn't move a whole lot and it's pretty straight. Like leaves have all of this little cellular structure in here that's gonna create this nice, beautiful shape. And if we go up to it, yeah, it's very bendable and we can, you know, do whatever we want. But when we're drawing them in a face, unless it's like the top of a palm tree and we want it to be blowing off, we want to keep the leaves a little bit straighter. And so that's how it's going to fit on there. And I'm taking my filbert right here and I'm going to be loading it with a light green and a dark green. And then it's really important that wherever you have the dark color, it stays at the same place. So if we want it to be on the top, we want to always make sure that the dark is on the top and the light is on the bottom. By one stroking, we're doing this cheater shading. And if we have leaves where the dark is on the top and the light is on the bottom, and then the next leaf is reversed, it's going to look odd. And we might not understand why, but that's why. So here we come in and we're going to add one leaf that's coming out nice and straight right here, and then one that comes down right there. And we can come over here and add one leaf right there, and then let's add one leaf coming up, and then one more right there that's breaking through that. And so nature isn't perfect. It comes in 3s and 5s. And so it's really nice to be able to have leaves that pattern that and that follow in that same way. So, okay. Now we get to get our awesome round brush and add some white to this beautiful design. Now it's really tempting anytime we're painting a face to make it bigger and bigger and bigger. And if we have the time for that, that's awesome. But if we're painting on the job and we're running out of time and we're trying to go fast, it's important that we're able to keep designs contained. And so this is a crown design. I'm going to keep it a crown instead of turning it into a mask. But one of the things we can do is just by adding a few of those little extra dots and bits, we've now remembered that this isn't a painting, okay? It's really hard sometimes, especially if we're painting a lot of people, to remember this isn't a painting, this is a person, okay? This is a person first that has a painting. And so we want to make sure that we're always incorporating a little bit of the eyes or a little bit of the mouth or something to where that this is going to stand out and be special and beautiful for her. So then we want to paint a teardrop that's going to come right here and just arc up and nice and over. And that teardrop, it's important that we don't do it right in between a petal. We want it to cross over because that's going to show that this isn't stuck in between, it's actually on top. So that arc is important. And then we do the smallest little teardrop in the backwards direction at the tip. Then what we're going to do is we're going to just place these nice little dots all around that little extra bump. And you can see that that already says hibiscus. If we were going super fast, we could be done right there. But I want to show you a few ways to just dress it up and to make it super fun and fancy. So from right here, we can do drag and drop teardrops, or you can do the flick ones where it's on the bridge of the nose. This is paper and that's really nice, it's flat, but on a human that isn't. And so it's really nice to be able to do the reverse teardrops where we just bring it down nice and slow and lay it down and pick up. Nice and slow, lay down, pick up. Nice and slow, right there. And over here, nice and slow. Okay, so we have those really great teardrops, and then I'm going to switch to a smaller round brush. We're going to just grab our little tiny one, and I'm going to show you two different ways to finish this. So on this side, we're going to just do something really simple. We're going to just come in the dark blue, and we're going to just do this trail of dots. And then over here on this side, well, and we can even do those dots here coming down. And you can see that that is just so beautiful and fast. And then on this side, we'll actually add a little bit more line work. So we'll just trace it in white. We'll do a bump in white there. And then we'll bring here, we'll do a nice swirl and some teardrops coming in. And that just says a little bit more of this is a wave instead of just this is the color blue because we like the ocean. It's like, no, that's a wave. And so again, we could be done here or we can add just a little bit more. I'll just show you how I usually finish off mine. We're gonna come right out here and we're gonna add a bending teardrop on each of the petals. And then just a couple little dots, maybe a dash, a little across. We don't want them to be exactly the same. A little wiggle there looks nice or whatever. And this just adds a little bit of fun. We can even, I'll show you the last little bit. Now remember, anytime we do a painting, we're telling a story. And it's important to remember what story we're telling. So is this the story of a wave? No. Could we tell that story? Of course we could, but that's not what this is. Is it a story of hibiscus leaves? No. That sounds good too, but not quite. This is the story of a hibiscus. And so we want to make sure whatever we're doing, this is getting the most detail, it's getting the most focus, it's already in the focal point of the face. And so that's great. But one other thing we can do is by adding just a little bit of outlining, it's really going to make it pop. So we just do a nice thin black outline, and you could do this in a darker red or in a blue. And then with this centerpiece, what we want to do is we want to just pull the bottom so it's a nice shadow right out there. And then from the center, we want this to look like it's has a little bit of dimension. And so we're adding just these little fold lines so that those petals look like they've opened. Because remember, a flower isn't flat, it's something that is opening. And so by doing these little creases, that is going to help tell that story. Okay, so here we have this beautiful hibiscus that's living in the water, and it's just awesome. And so I'm gonna pull it a little bit closer so that you can see that that is just a really fun story that we told. Now what I want to do is I want to show you two other flowers that we could replace that hibiscus. And this blue, it could be a rainbow, it could be whatever color you want. If you want, you can even skip this little middle part and just do a loop. If you just want to do like a headband straight across or whatever, there's a lot of variation to this, but this is a really good place to start. So the other flowers I want to show you, and I want to see if I can get you a little bit closer. Yes. Yeah, I'm trying here. Okay. Probably ditch that cord. You guys are going for a nice little ride here. Okay. You can't quite tell if that is actually. Is that bigger? Yes. Okay, awesome. So let me show you these other two flowers. And actually, okay, I want to use white. So I'm gonna get colored paper so that you can see the white. White is my favorite face paint color, and so it is so sad to not use skin tone paper so that you can't see what's going on. Okay, so here we go. I think that was about how close we were before. Okay, awesome. All right, so what we want to do is we want to just load up our one stroke, make sure we've got a nice healthy load, and I'm going to show you two separate flowers. Now, before I do that, I've got to show you one other thing. So we're going to set down a loaded brush. Careful. Okay, so here we go. When we looked before at the radial symmetry, and we'll put it back up. All right, when we looked at this circle and this circle, and then we drew our flower, that's great. But one of the things that can really help us when we are trying to change the perspective on these flowers that we're drawing is we can still draw those two same circles. So if we have this circle right here, and then we have this circle right here, this is the same daisy, but now we've got these petals, and by drawing within those two circles, that daisy is going to look right, because the petals are in the same relationship by having those two circles. Another one that we could do is if we were to have our first circle and then our second circle here like this. And now you can see that we have the little petals and then they get bigger as they come around and then they get smaller. And so this allows us to see how do we make the petals be the right size with each other as we are shifting and as we are changing. And so when we do these next flowers, we're going to keep that in mind. This first rose, we won't need it, but the second one we do, we will. So here we go. Okay, back to the paint. All right, so we want to paint a circle, and we can do that in one line or we can do it in several, but I'm going to just do it in one. So here we're just going to have, oh, we need a little more water. There we go. That feels right. Okay. We're just going to go around in this nice circle and we're just pivoting. Okay, we're going to actually wash out that first load because obviously it has dried. We're going to load third time's the charm. Okay, so we're going around in this circle and we're just going to come around in this nice, beautiful circle all the way around. There we go. All right, and then we're gonna let that dry for a second while I show you the other flower. The other flower I wanna show you guys is I wanna show you a lily. And lilies are one of the few flowers that get asked for by name. So you'll have a lot of kids that'll be like, oh, I want a flower, or I want a flower crown, or I want a flower mask, or whatever. They'll just say flower. But there are a few flowers that kids will actually ask for. And lilies are one, roses are one, daisies, sometimes a sunflower for sure. But lilies are people's favorites. So it's kind of important to know how to do that one, because if somebody says a flower, you can do a lily, but if somebody says a lily, you can't be like, oh, well, how about a rose? So what we want to do is we want to start with the first petal. And the first petal is going to come out, it's going to come across, and it's going to come back. And they're very square. And then we've got the second one, it's going to do the same thing. It's going to be these two little square petals. And what we're doing is we're showing that those petals are open and it's behind. Then the next one, we're going to come clear out and then we're going to come down and back and around. My white turned pink. Hold on, let me reload. Okay. Then we're gonna do another one that matches this one right here. It's gonna come really far out, then it's gonna point down, and then it's gonna come back and around. Then our last petal is going to be this shape here where it comes down into a point. And we get to see that beautiful like pear shape on both sides. And you can look at drawings of lilies or you can look at real lilies to get these beautiful shapes in the different orientations. But this is looking really great. Then we want to make sure that we get the inside of the lily right. And so we're going to just get a little bit of white. And there are two different shapes that happen inside of a lily. When we buy them from the store, often some of these parts have been removed because they make a big mess with all the pollen. But we're just going to come in here and we're going to bring out, I like to do 3. So we bring out these 3. And the first one is going to have a 2 or a 3 bulb. Sometimes you could squeeze in 4 if you wanted, but that is where the pollen goes in. That's where the bee shows up with its pollen. And okay, so I actually took classes about this in college, and so I'm going to give you more information than you need just because I love it so much. But that is actually going to be the longest piece because you don't want a flower that self-fertilizes. And so these straight rods are actually where the pollen comes. And if you ever touch these, they make your hands turn black or yellow, whatever color they are. But they're shorter than this one because we don't want this pollen to accidentally get in there. So when the bee comes, it comes to this center one and deposits pollen and then picks up this pollen while it's there. So it's awesome. And you could add a couple more or you could add a third one, but I think that 3 is perfect. And then usually I like to have a little bit more white on the outside of my petals. And so if there isn't as much as I want, I can even come in here and I can just add that sharp white edge wherever I want it. And so I'm going to add it right there and right there and right here. Awesome. Okay. A little bit of texture. Okay, great. Now we want to put in some of the green while that's drying. And so I'm grabbing my filbert again because I love doing leaves with a filbert. And lily greenery it's in the summer, and so it is when everything is at its brightest. And so I use a really pretty bright green. And we can see that this flower is opening this way, which means underneath where we can't see is the little back of the flower. And that means that the stem is probably coming this way. If we're to put the stem in over here, it wouldn't look right at all. And so we can bring that stem right over from here, and then we can bring a leaf up here, and we can bring another leaf. And remember, we're not telling a leaf story, so even though this leaf is nice and big and beautiful, by tucking it behind that petal, it knows its place. If we were to bring that leaf in front of the petal, all of a sudden this would turn into a story about a plant rather than a flower. So there we go. And you can see that we have this nice arc. If we wanted it to be a little bit more balanced, we could bring another one up here. But this is a really good place to talk about the family story that we were saying. So both of these flowers are big. This is an adult flower. And so if we wanted to, we can bring this up over here and we could have that little baby flower right up here, or the little kid flower. And that can be so powerful and so beautiful in our designs to make sure that we keep room for those little guys. And so normally I would put him in when I put in the green But you can see that that's so easy and so simple. And now all of a sudden it looks so much more special because that flower's not alone. Flowers don't like to be lonely. Okay, so let's go and finish up the row.
Can I ask a Lily question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it looks awesome, but lilies terrify me because I feel like when I was watching you paint it, I was kind of like, where are you going with that?
Yes.
So what is the, like, what makes a lily? Like, before I can actually see what's going to happen,
Sure,
what do I need to
absolutely.
make sure is there?
So you have 5 petals. That's important. And then you have this circle shape. All of the petals are going to be the same size. Now, in this perspective, it's not. But if this petal right here was all the way down here, it wouldn't be the right shape anymore because it would be lopsided. So anytime you see a lily, you can draw a circle, like an ellipse or something that will go around. So you've got 5 petals, you've got that. And then when you do the black outlining, I'll show you a couple extra things that will really help it say it's a lily.
Okay, awesome. Thanks.
Yeah, you bet. Okay, so what we're gonna do here on the rows, I wanna show you, this is when we wanna use the angle brush. Now remember, bristles bring water and water gets us paint. So an angle brush is giving you the chance to have more of one color of your split cake than the others. And not more as in a width, but more as in a quantity. And so when we're doing roses, we really want a lot of the tip color. And so we can load that white and try and keep it white. Now, if you remember when I said this first petal, we didn't want to go back on itself where we come up and I made us pivot. Now we do want to come back on itself and we want that red to show up on the outside. And I'll show it to you as we do it on the flower. But we want to make sure that this poor rose isn't lonely. And so let's do some rose buds. We want to make sure that they're a little pointy. So we can have a little pointy rose bud right there. And we can have a little one right here. And then we can have one up here and one over here. And you can see on this load that I've got that white loaded really good on that edge. So now what we want to do is we want to do a U or an upside down U, kind of like an N shape right there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to shift over just a little bit. It doesn't matter which direction. We're going to shift over just a little and we're going to then do our U and we're going to scoop down and come back up. And that gives us that swirling inside of the rose. And at that point, if you want, you can come and we can do that to a couple of these as well. And that gives us a really cute little rosebud. And you want to make sure it's, again, the paper makes it hard, but on skin, you can usually keep a true load a little bit longer. But anytime you're doing a rose, you want to keep a really bright white. And if it ends up getting pretty pink, then you just reload. It's not that bad of a thing. But then we're going to come right here. And what we're doing is usually when we're one stroking, we're up and down and we're just moving. Or we're blending in and out. And so it's this sweeping movement. When you do one stroke roses, what you're actually going to find yourself doing is you're pushing. And so we're going to go onto these bristles and we're going to push. And then we're going to move. And that push and move is what's going to deliver that really bright white. So I'm going to reload one more time since I just painted all our white on my finger. Okay, so here we go back to this rosebud. What we're going to do is we're going to pull this and we're going to push and cut in. And when we cut in, the white went on top of the red right there. And that is what makes this petal look like it's opening out. So we come over to this side and we're going to scoop in and push and cut it right back. And then we're going to come back over to here. And you can even add a little bit of a wiggle if you want. and cut it in. And we just keep going back and forth. And when you cut over, you can see I've lost my white tip. And so I can just go ahead and reload. So we come in here and we lay down and we just tuck it in. And I'm gonna tuck that one more time, and we're gonna tuck this one in here. And we just keep tucking those little layers in until we are happy with how many we have and that it looks balanced. And you can see that if when we're doing our outline, if we wanna come in here, well, I'll show you with just white because it'll be easier. But then what we wanna do is we want to tuck a couple, because right now we have 2 little buds and 2 little tiny baby buds. And so we're gonna let one of these flowers be just a little bit older. And so we're gonna tuck just twice here. We're gonna scoop around that way and come, and we're gonna scoop once more around. And now we've got a little bit older, 2 little tinies, and then a baby. And this is where we get to have fun and we get to add the green. Now, when we do rose petals or rose leaves are very jaggedy. And so there are a couple of ways we can do that. Number one, we can just skip it. You can do the regular leaves and it'll look fine. But if we add that little bit of jaggedy, it's going to say even stronger that it's green. And so right here you can see I've got not green, that it's rose. We've got the green, and then we've got brown, and we've actually got a red. And by loading this color, it's going to give us a more natural, nuanced green that will look a little bit more like we actually went out and picked this rose instead of the drawing. But you can see here, we want to finish up this rosebud with the green actually on the flower, because these ones are so young that they haven't fully opened. And so I usually do 3, 1 on either edge and then 1 in the middle. And then because we see so much of that flower, we can see a little bit of the back bud, and then we can put in the stick. And roses often look great with these trailing green lines. And so here we have that little bit of green there, and we'll throw in another wispy line here, and then we can wisp back in the other direction, and we can try and get a little bit of green onto that one as well. There we go. Okay, so now we kind of have a place to put our leaves. So one of the ways that you can get the jaggedy lines is if we just jagged our line, and that works totally well for the outside of the leaf, but the inside of the leaf ends up looking a little jaggedy too, and I don't like that. And so I'll go back in and I'll do a second leaf right on top of that first one that's just smaller and inside. So I do the jaggedy edge and then I clean up the inside. And so we can do a second little jaggedy edge, and then clean up the inside. And that's just going to read rose a lot better. The other way that we can do it, and this is, again, it's hard to show on paper, but I'll do my best, is we just load up the green and we put it down with our wet brush. And then while it's still wet, we pull a drier brush and we come in here and we just fuzz out that border and we just make it a little bit jagged. And you can see that that gives us that little bit of a jaggedy edge too. So those are some ways that you can do it, but it totally is fine if you like the look or if you're going fast to just put in regular leaves. That is still absolutely beautiful. And you just tuck the leaves around. This is the perfect time to look at it and say, okay, what am I missing? And leaves and flowers are great, but they love line work. And so if you want to add the dots or the swirls or any of that on there, we totally can. I'm going to just show you one other option, and that is we've got this great pink and red, and we've got the shading. We've got so many different colors on there, but the stark white isn't really there. And so we can put it back in. We can come in here and we can add those little baby breath bits, which are so cute with roses. And then on the very edge, we can add just that little bit of super bright white. And we can do this on the outer edge of the rose to pull in those petals there. And if there are any petals that you're like, oh, I love it, but it's just a little too harsh, like especially in the middle, you can grab that same brush, really any brush that is just a little bit damp or even just dry, and you can pull it down. And that's going to just add another beautiful texture to those petals, but it's going to leave that really bright white edge. So if you're doing an arm piece that is supposed to be like a tattoo, there might be time for this and it might be worth it. But if you're just trying to go quick and get something beautiful on there, then this is totally extra work that you don't need to do. But you can see that that's just so fun to add that little bit of white. There we go, to those fun roses. Okay, so those are some roses. Now let's finish up our lily. So one of the things that Jane, you had asked that we were talking about is how to know a lily's a lily. And the way that we do is a lily is a star. And so if you took a star, which nobody would say that's a lily, they would say it's a star. What you do is we tuck in. And so we make it go a little bit bulby and then less. Now you can see this is like a starfish instead of just a star like that. But then all you have to do is bend a couple of these petals because a lily does not have the strength to go like that. It like flops over. And so any of these petals, if this one bent, now it comes down here, and this one bent, now it comes down here. And then those two would probably bend and you wouldn't even see that part. And so then you have an open lily and you can put in the center of your lily. So you're looking for those 5 petals that have opened and relaxed. Before they open, they're nice and shut like that. But okay, so let me show you these last details we can add. Okay, so what we're doing here is we're just defining these shapes even more. So we're going to do a bit of a bump right there because it's going to show that that lily shape is like funneled, kind of like a Pringle chip. That bump shows us that. So then we're going to bump this one too to get that Pringle shape. Now these petals are behind these ones. And so this petal is going to kind of come up, and that round shape is that petal being in front. And this one's in front too. And so we have that round shape there. And then they come back over to here, back over to here. And then this one is the one that's in front the most. And so what we want to do is we want to have that petal come all the way in here and be in front of that one. Do you see how by having that outline be what's in front, those ones are tucking in behind? And so then it comes out here. And we also want to scoop it. And what that little scoop does is it lets us see that this is all going inside of something. And so in there is where these parts come out. And I wouldn't outline them all the way, but adding just a little bit of outlining, I feel like gives you the best of both worlds. So we have just that little bit of outlining. And then this is the part that's really fun. For these lilies, we can come in here and we can add these little black spots. And this is gonna just say, oh, that's a lily. And we're just using like a sporadic kind of dot that we would use for cheetahs or tigers. Anyway, and then of course, because we've got so much going on right here, this is the story of a lily. And so I probably would add even just that much black. Lets us know that those lilies are important. And then I would add just one more color to the green to give it a little bit more depth. And so that can be just coming in here and adding a few of these little teardrops to kind of freshen things up a little bit. We could add some little dots We could even add a couple teardrops on the lily leaf themselves. Now this doesn't look as realistic, but it doesn't mean that it isn't beautiful and fun. And we can add a few little dots on the outside to look like dew, maybe a couple more teardrops. Anyway, and you can see that we can just fill it out because we know we need a flower. We need that flower to have friends. We need there to be green, and then the extra little sparkles and magic. And here are these happy one-stroke flowers. Okay, so you guys are doing awesome. We have made it through 2 of our 3 techniques. We're doing great. We've got half an hour left for our last technique. I just wanted to take a quick pause here, get a drink, and see if there are any other questions. Did that help you with your lilies, Jane?
Mm-hmm. Could you hold the camera super close, or the paper close, so I could see the rose leaves?
Let's say we
Thanks.
keep Brandon Lemon with
Yeah.
graphic designer for now.
Awesome.
And let's
Thank you.
also apply that to.
There's what we've got going on. Okay. Great. So at this point, you guys are awesome and you're doing great. And we're painting all these fun flowers and it's wonderful. But there's one technique left, and this is one of my favorites. And people don't do it enough. And so we are going to do it because I love it. And that is where, and yes, she doesn't have a head. Sorry about that. But we're going to do a décolletage for this last one. Okay. When we are painting flowers, and we even did this in our class, we started with a real flower and we're like, okay, here's this beautiful flower. We're trying to do this flower, but it doesn't need to be that way. We're artists. We can do whatever we want. We can make something completely whimsical. We could turn, you know, how cool would it be to have a moon that had a bouquet of flowers draped over it? I mean, that'd be awesome, right? And so flowers are one of the parts of face painting that doesn't get played with enough. We use them to add stuff to other designs, and that's awesome, but we don't pull in other influences into our flowers enough. Now in flower arrangements, they do this all the time. You'll get a flower arrangement that has a balloon sticking out of it, or you'll get a flower arrangement that has like some styrofoam sparkly pieces that are like stars or something. And so there are different things that can be really fun. But in face painting, we kind of tend to shy away from that. And we see so much one stroke and we see so much of that. But I want to show you just a few fun little things we can do to really own flowers as our own artistic journey. And a couple of the artists that do this really well is if you look at like Monet's work and the impressionistic flowers, you look at the lilies and or the lily pads, and you see water lilies, and you look at Georgia O'Keeffe's flowers that are giant and huge and awesome, and you know they're flowers. And so we can do that. And what we need to do is we need to remember to have big flowers. We need to make sure that they're there. We need to make sure that flowers have friends, and we need to make sure that there's green. And so if we follow the rules, then we can break all of the other ones. They don't have to look like exactly that flower. And so just a simple example that I'll show you really quick. I'll take her back down for a quick second. Is when we are drawing, we do this all the time. At least I do this all the time. So we can go in and we can go like, okay, here we go. What kind of flower? It's a tulip, right? We can even come in here and go like this. This is one I do all the time when I'm just doodling. And in henna, we do a lot of line work flowers. And so it's super fun. Okay, so then it's like, oh wow, we've got some roses. We can come in here and we can do, you know, the little blossomy daisy things. We can do really funky flowers that aren't even real. So we can have a little bend and then a huge petal and then a little petal and then a huge petal and then you know, and all of these are flowers. Like you would look at that and you would say, oh, that's a flower, but we don't give ourselves that opportunity to have that kind of fun as we're face painting. So I'm going to show you how to do it. So what I like to call this is I like to call this layering. And this is where we are going to be drawing these flowers. We're not using one strokes. We're not using petals. We're not going to try and construct a real flower. We're not thinking, okay, here's the center, and then we're going to do this petal and this petal and this petal. We're not trying to make it look realistic. We're trying to make it feel the way that flowers feel to us. So one of the things that we're gonna do is we're gonna use a sponge. Believe it or not, Laura can sponge. Here we go. And I'm just going to load up. This is a fusion. I don't really love the way this smells, but I really like having white and yellow and green and green. So we're going to use these colors. And when you're loading a sponge, what you want to do is you want to squeeze your sponge. And what that does is it allows the water to kind of, it's almost like you're squirting the water out, because we don't want the water inside of the sponge. We want it out here where the paint is. And so we squeeze it, the water comes to the edge, and it lets us push something harder. If you take a clean sponge, because you don't want to do this with a dirty one, and you push it on your skin, you can feel how hard that is. If you squeeze it and you push, you can feel the force from your fingers a lot stronger. And that's just going to let you load faster. And so when we're trying to go fast, that can be really nice. So we just load up that color. And then we come in here. And whenever we're working on a décolletage area, we often are trying to make something look really pretty. And this is not the neckline that they will give you. Usually the neckline is quite a bit higher, or it's even lower, but this is beautiful to work on as a model. So here we go. But we want to make sure that we don't, on the face, if we look at the face paint that we did earlier, maybe. Okay. I'm not sure where she went. Okay, I'll just show you this other one. Okay, when we look at the face, there is a V right here. And we use that V all the time. We drop down onto the nose, we do these tiny little dots. So if we take a beautiful flower crown and we stick it right here, you guys remember when we did the hibiscus flower and we did that awesome like teardroppy thing? If we draw those little dots, it's going to go straight down into the center of her chest, and it might read a little uncomfortable. Now, she might be fine with it, but for when we're painting, we're not just painting for the person wearing the painting, we are painting for everybody that's gonna see it. And so we wanna make sure that when we do a décolletage area, we're painting something that is really easy to enjoy. And when we draw somebody's focus down here, it might be uncomfortable for her to have all of these people, like they see her face, then they see her painting, and then they look, you know, so we want to kind of avoid that. So we can either focus on one area and draw our lines to swoop, which is absolutely beautiful, or we can have something that is arcing like a necklace and that it grows both directions up. So we want to either point up in both directions or we want to come swoop across. So what I'm doing here is I'm just giving us a little bit of a background that we're going to work on top of. So this is just showing us that we have this beautiful green world that we're going to describe. Because really, when you look at flowers in nature, there is always more green than blossom. It is very rare, unless it's a fruit tree, that you get more blossoms than green. So there we just have some nice fun color. And this can be all kinds of colors, but when we're doing the green, it just is really nice. Okay. So now I've got, it's kind of a medium small filbert. I'm not sure. It says number 8, but it's probably a number 10, I would say. But we're going to go in and we're going to just put in a little bit of green. And actually, let's put in some color first. So I'm going to get my bigger filbert. And this is so much fun. So we can take some yellow, because yellow is one of the most used colors for the center of flowers. And we can say, okay, I want to have a flower that's going to live right here. Yellow orange. I'm going to have one that's living right here. And I'm going to have one that's living right here. And then let's put one more that's going to live right here. And this is a really fun way to paint, because as you can see, like this could be an alien landing. Like we don't even know what this is. And so it's really awesome, because often when we're painting in public and people don't know that we've got mad skills. And so we start out with this and they're like, what is she doing? And it's really kind of fun to be like, just wait for it, you know, or you just be like, oh, I just love painting. And you can really play up the fact that you have no idea what's going on, except that you really do. So I have fun with that. Okay, so then we can put in a nice big flower right here. And we come in here and we're gonna have another big flower that lives right here. And maybe its little brother is gonna live with it. And then let's put one really nice big one right there. Okay, that looks great. Okay, now I'm going to show you one of my very favorite ways to paint flowers. This is so much fun. And we are going to do it with a little filbert. So this one says it's a number 8, and I actually believe it. So you can see these both of these brushes say they're the same size, and I don't believe them, but I don't know. Anyway, okay, so we're getting this, and this is a technique that watercolorists use, and so why can't we do it too? All right, so I'm loading up some blue and purple. And this is going to be kind of a pointier flower. So I'm going to use one right here, and then we'll probably put a second one, because when you do a flower arrangement, it is so sad to make a lonely flower. They don't like to be alone. So whenever you put in one blossom, you want to make sure, even if it's small, that there's a second one. So what we're going to do is we want to think of the shape of an arrow in our head. And we're going to put in the tip of the arrow, and then we're going to just kind of fill it out. So think this could even be grapes. The shape of grapes right there. And then we're going to come up here and we'll just do some smaller grape shape right there. Okay, now I still have quite a bit of paint on here, but I have all of that color that I want. And so what I can do next is I can come and I can grab a little bit of white. So now you can see I have some white, because my white's pretty wet. And so I've picked up some white. And then I can come to just the lid of a paint, and I can just paint back and forth. And what that does is it mixes that white with the purple that was already on the brush. So this purple will match exactly to that purple. It's just a lighter shade. And so then I can come back in, and I can come and I can add another layer of these petals, and come over here and add another layer of these petals. I bet you guys can guess what we're going to do next. I'm going to come back to the white, pick up a little more white. And if you run out of water, you can also pick up a little water if it gets to be too dry. And then you go back to your lid, and you go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And then you have an even lighter version of the exact same color. And so then we come back in and we add another layer of these little flowers. And you can see this would work great for a pine cone if this was a Christmas one, and you just add that white to the brown, and it would just work. Okay, awesome. Now, is this the centerpiece flower? No, it's not. But does it have a place in a bouquet? Absolutely. We want to add dimension, we want to add texture, and we want to add symmetry. This is a very texture heavy blossom. Now we can come back onto the white and grab right in the little spot where I have my purple. And now this is a very light white, and we can come in and just add a couple that almost look like highlights to that flower. Okay, that's looking great. All right, so now once we've got our blossoms in there, well, okay, so I'm going to show you a couple, yeah, we got a couple different ways. So these yellow circles, we can grab our petal brush and we can make them into beautiful daisies. And so we just load up. And because we already have the center, it allows us to have a little bit bigger of a flower. And I'm going to show you a couple different ways we can do it that's really cool. Okay, got this. Now I got to wipe off the tip. I'm going to grab some red. And if you're loading on a one stroke, it's really nice because you don't have to streak it because you've already been using it. And so it's going to be wet enough to give you that nice tip. All right, so one of the things that we can do is we can, let me make sure I do this in the direction I want to. Okay, so here on this one, we are going to have more of the 90-degree angle so that we get little petals. So we're going to come in here and we're going to put in these little petals. And you can see that we're kind of putting them all in the same direction, right? Do you see how instead of like trying to go all the way around, I'm kind of sticking to the same direction? Now, remember, we've got the base of the flower that's green, and that's where all of these are coming from. So if this wasn't open all the way yet, do you see how they're kind of all growing out of there? So then on this side, we go back to that green, and that is where we put in the bigger petals. Okay, do you see how cool that is? This flower is now opening in that direction. And so instead of it just looking like we ironed these flowers out, this isn't wrapping paper, this is actual flowers. It's a bouquet, it's awesome. We can also just do one where we just go all the way around, and we can now make this flower look like it's in front of that one, which would actually happen in a flower bouquet. They're not all leaving perfect amounts of space for everybody like a family photo. They kind of push each other out. Okay, so we've got that pretty daisy. All right, another way that we can do this is I just have a 1/2 inch filbert, or not filbert, a 1/2 inch flat brush. And then I can grab whatever color I'm in the mood for. And let's keep to our red and yellow. That's being kind of fun. Okay, so I've got this loaded. We've got 1/2 red, 1/2 yellow, and we can come in here and we can just add our little petals all the way around. And if we give them pointed petals, these will turn into sunflowers. But if we do these little bendy petals, they'll just come into something else. And the closer in that we get, the smaller that inside flower is going to become. And so that looks good to me. And then we've got one more out here that, yeah, we'll do this kind again. So we're just doing bend. And if it's easier to get them to like all match up, to do a cross and a cross and a cross and a cross, and then we've just got room for one in between each of those. And anytime you end up with a little extra space, you can just do a little tiny petal, or you can go to one of the other petals and make it bigger. Okay, so we've got that awesome flower. Now is the time that we get to add the green. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that we add at least 2 or 3 different kinds of green. And so I'm going to grab, this is a liner brush. It just has really long bristles. And remember, really long bristles means more water, means more paint. And so this can be a nice way when you have the room to get some sweeping lines to be able to do that. So I'm getting some just regular green. There's nothing special about this color. And when you're using a liner brush, you're just going to drag it. It's just going to end up being really wispy and pretty. So we get that nice line. Let's bring another one down. Let's bring, and this is all just the first layer. We are going to add a whole bunch of green. So we don't have to worry too much about, is this exactly right? Because we've got time. Time is on our side with this. Okay, now can you see how here, instead of going down, I'm wisping it up, and that's letting us keep it in this nice round shape. And that will keep it from becoming awkward for anybody. Okay, awesome. So we've got some nice wispy lines. Now, I love ferns. So I want to add a fern in here. It's something that is in flower arrangements, but there are very few people that will come up to you and say, hey, can I have a fern painted on my face? So I paint them because I like them, but people like them too. They just don't know they do. I have to teach them. Okay, so here we have our little filbert again. And the way to add a fern is we're just going to come in here and we just want to have a nice little line that we know where we're going. And we add one of our little leaves right up there at the top. And what I'm doing is I'm painting on the side of the filbert. So I'm not painting here, I'm painting here, and then I'm pushing. And by doing that, it keeps the light on the inside and the dark goes on both of the outsides. So we're going to go here, push and release, here, push and release. And the longer you pull, the longer those leaves are going to be. So we can keep these nice tight little ferns, or we can make them really long, you know, a fern to write home about, whatever we want. And you can see that that just is such a beautiful shape to add to these flowers. And we don't have to put in a full fern. We can say there's a fern living right here that then went behind there, you know, but we can just tuck these in wherever we want to add a little bit more depth and dimension. So we got those little ferns. I'm not gonna add ferns over here because I want to keep this side nice and quiet, but I will add a couple little leaves just so that it's not lonely. Okay, awesome. Now I want to add a few more big leaves. You can see that we've got this nice, beautiful color in here, and I don't want to muddy that up, but I want to make sure that our boundaries are really protected. And right now, this beautiful color, it's escaping too many different places. There isn't enough in the arrangement. And when we're at home and we're doing an actual flower arrangement, what happens is the blossoms all fall. And that's not what we want when we do a flower arrangement. We want to make sure that it's all tight in there, and so we keep adding. And that's what we do with these arrangements, is when we just feel like, okay, there's not enough, then we just add some more. So I'm going to add that natural green color that's with those other two, brown and red, to get it's a little bit more dark in there, but I want to keep it out of the center. I want to keep it more out here. So we're going to add a nice leaf right there. And maybe another one there. We want to make sure that this flower has a stem. So we'll come over here and we'll add that green there to give that flower a nice stem, because a lot of times these bigger flowers do have the bigger greenery to be able to keep it as a bud, and so that greenery doesn't go anywhere. And I can show you that. Okay, on this cool flower, that's awesome. If you look at the back, look how big these sepals were to be able to contain that blossom. And so don't feel bad throwing in some of those bigger flowers. So then we'll just put another leaf here, another leaf here, and you really just kind of keep putting them in until you're happy with how many there are and wherever they are. And let's go ahead and add a couple right in here. Put some right on top of that fern. Kind of mask the beginning of those lines there. Maybe another one right there. Okay, I'm feeling a lot happier. I would put that one back over her shoulder, so we have to like poke it up. But okay, so I think that's looking really good. Awesome. So now what we get to do is we get to go in and we get to define all of the greatness. Right now, this is like a snapshot. It's kind of blurry, and we just need to touch it up a little bit here and there. And so we can do that in black, we can do that in brown, we can do it with red, whatever we want to do. And you can see how much is going to come out now that we get to do the line work, now that we get to actually draw. All of this was just giving us a base to work on. And you could give the same base to 10 different artists and you would end up with 10 different bouquets. It's really amazing. So here, let's just try and do a little teardrop shape right there. And then we're going to come out and do a teardrop, and out and do a teardrop, and around and around and around. And there we have a nice little rose living back there. And so we can do another one right here. We can do a little swirl, and then we can say, okay, I'm going to give you a petal that comes all the way around right there. And then here's another petal that's going to come around, and then here's a petal that's going to come around. And these really, there's no special, it has to look this way or it has to look that way. You can see those two don't match, but they still have a place here. And then for this one, I'm going to finish these two different, so you can see a couple different options. But we can bring this around and down, and around and down, and then in a little bit more, and then we can have a nice little swirl right there. And then this one, let's just do a swirl right there, and then scoop around the back and draw a line, like a little ladybug. Okay, so that's looking awesome. And then I would usually use brown to do this part, but we can come here and we can just add dots on like half of that. And we can come in here and we can just add dots on half of that. Awesome. Okay, and then here, well, yeah. Okay, so here we can just outline these petals. But again, it doesn't have to be a perfect outline. We can come and we can add a swirl onto that petal. And we can cut in a bunch if we want to. We can do whatever we want to this because we're drawing. We're just giving it the feeling of this. Okay, and then I'm gonna finish that one different. So then we're gonna get white. And right now, like, it's working, but only kind of, you know, we need a little bit of help still. And that's what is so fun about this style of painting, is with these layers, we just keep going until we're happy and until it's beautiful. So we can do a nice round white dot boundary to that flower. We can come in here and we can add some white highlights to that one, and some white boundaries to that one. And they don't have to just be highlights, they can be teardrops. So if we want to add teardrops all over this rose, you know, that totally works. Okay, and then we can do the little white dots in the ring on this one too if we want. We can come in here and we can add teardrops on every single petal here. And that just makes it a different flower. Like, it's just so fun to have that freedom. Okay, so then this one out here, I just wanted to show you a little bit different. If we come like we did with the hibiscus and we just do the white outline and then a little bit of, and we don't even follow the petals for sure. I mean, what a special flower is that? It's absolutely beautiful and it's so simple and it's just a lot of fun. Can you guys still see me okay? The computer said okay, all right, great. So then all we're missing are those extra little bits. So with this brush or whatever one you want, we can just add in a couple little more swirls, a couple little more teardrops, and it just gives, again, that extra depth that we're looking for. And you can see that with this style, we are using everything. We're doing drawing, we're doing our petals laying down, we're doing our one stroke, a little tiny bit here and there, but we can just keep our imaginations loose and keep something beautiful. And this will look a lot more like wildflowers. This one, it's a story of friends. You wouldn't look at this and say, oh, who is the most important person? You'd be like, oh my gosh, look at those flowers. This was something that somebody went out for a walk. They weren't even planning on picking flowers, but then they found these and they just saw the beauty and they needed it. So they picked it. Anyway, so then add a couple little stars, whatever you want. But you can see that the person who gets to now walk around with something like this on their shoulder all day, they're going to feel so pretty and they're going to feel so special. And because there are so many choices and so many layers, they're not going to be the same. It's not going to be something that, oh yeah, I saw that on Facebook. Nobody will ever say that about this. And that's so fun to be able to give somebody something that is that special and that unique. So those are our 3 techniques. We still have 3 minutes. Yay! We didn't run out of time. Does anybody have questions? Do you guys want to see anything else again? How are we doing? What can I tell you?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, Laura.
Class. Absolutely. I love flowers. I love painting. It's awesome. Let me tell you a little bit about what to expect next. I will go ahead and get this exported and everything. And as soon as I have it ready, I will take still pictures of everything we did. And I will get you a copy of the pictures and a link that you can rewatch any of this that you want. And then moving forward, I plan to have a class once a week. It will probably be this same time slot, but I will have those topics out like every, 6 weeks in advance. So you can see if there are any other classes you want to take. On the same website where you signed up for this one, I also have the option to be a member, and that just gets you access to all of the classes. And that's the same price as one class. It gets you in for a month. So if you decide that you're interested, you had a good time and you want to take more classes, that's something we can totally make happen. But I'm really glad you were here. I hope you learn some awesome flowers. And I think you're on the Learning with Laura group. You guys are. And if you do any of these paintings, I would love to see them. So you're welcome to upload pictures, and yay, we'll all be happy flower painters together. Anyway. Okay, well, if we don't have any other questions, I'll say goodnight, and I hope you sleep well and enjoy painting.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Good night.
Laura. It was awesome.
Bye.
It was pretty, yes.
Good.